Good evening, members. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this meeting of the Braintree District Council Cabinet, being held in the Council Chamber here at Causeway House. You'll see that we are socially distanced. I will begin with the agenda. Agenda item 1, apologies for absence. We have one apology from absence, which is from Councillor Ritchie. Agenda item 2, declarations of interest. Before I ask members for declarations of interest, I have been advised by the governance team that any member who is a member of another authority, such as a town, parish or county council, does not need to declare that at this meeting. Are there any other declarations of interest anyone wishes to raise? No, thank you. Item 3, minutes of the previous meeting. This is to approve as a correct record the minutes of the meeting of Cabinet held on the 29th of November. Copies of the minutes have been circulated. Are you happy that I sign them as a true record? Agreed? Thank you. Move on to item 4, public question time. I'm advised that there are no members of the public that wish to raise questions or make a statement at this meeting. That will take us on to item 5, under the overall strategy heading, the Council Budget and Council Tax 22-23 and the Medium Term Financial Strategy 22-23 to 25-26. For anyone who is just joining the story, this is our third meeting. The budget in its initial stages has been before the Performance Management Committee in January and again last week, at which all members of the Council were also invited. The purpose of tonight is to agree any recommendations to go forward to Council and also anything that Cabinet should take forward on its own accord. So without more ado, I'm going to ask Councillor John McKee, the Cabinet Member for Finance and Corporate Transformation, to introduce the paper. Councillor McKee.
Thank you, Chair. The report I'm about to read to you sets out the proposals for the budget and Mtfs 22-23 to 25-26. The Cabinet have considered these matters at 2 separate strategy workshops, and proposals have been reviewed and scrutinised, as the leader said, a Performance Management Scrutiny Committee 3 times very recently, last on the 2nd of February. Key priorities are in the budget. The budget proposal includes investment in the following key priorities: a substantial increase in resources into the planning enforcement team, creating a robust and proactive service. Funding for resources to push ahead with the Council's climate change and cycling strategies by employing 2 new programme officers, extending air quality monitoring capacity and continuing recycling collections of food and drink cartons, extending the Councillor Community Grant Scheme with £1,250 allocated to each councillor, and securing the Council's critical financial and other core business systems, including enhancing their protection against the threat of cyber attack. Capital investment. Additional capital investment of £1.5 million is proposed for 22-23, which includes over £600,000 to upgrade our ICT infrastructure and systems, around £500,000 for keeping our property in good state of repair and maintenance and to make improvements to our operational workshop space, £150,000 to refurbish play areas, £150,000 to modernise the customer relationship management and in-cab technology supporting our operational workforce, and the paper is coming later to talk on that item. Capital bids for 22-23 and provisional items for future years are set out in Appendix H, and detail of the medium-term financial capital programme set out in our capital investment strategy, Appendix I. Closing the budget gap. The budget also makes progress on strengthening our long-term financial resilience. New savings and additional income of £523,000 have been identified for 22-23, with a further 66,000 in future years. Returns from our financial investments, including our pooled funds, which were impacted by the pandemic and market reaction, are expected to recover over the period of the MTFS, with an initial £100,000 extra income projected for next year and further increases in subsequent years. By ensuring that the homelessness prevention grant is being used to maximum effect, has netted £141,000 of extra income into the general fund. With more business premises being created across the district, including those being delivered by our own strategic investment programme, we have been able to reflect an extra £220,000 of business rate income for next year and further growth over the MTFS. Residential development across the district has meant that the rise in our council tax base has more than doubled over previous forecasted for 22-23, leading to an increase in income of over £130,000. Better than expected collection performance in the current year has resulted in a share of the collection fund balance of £198,000. Against this, we have to allow for increases in day-to-day costs as well as some new unavoidable pressures. Unavoidable cost pressures reflected in the base budget totaled £294,000 in 22-23, with an annual increase of 25 per annum in subsequent years of the MTFS. On pay, we have assumed a cost of living increase of 2% per annum over the whole MTFS period. Inflationary assumptions have been built into the budget, including that for fuel and energy costs, which are increasing over previously assumed levels. Note, inflation is forecast to increase beyond that. However, we have sufficient level of balances in place to weather any short-term budgetary impact. It would be remiss of me not to mention the pandemic. We continue to see an impact on our finances of the pandemic, particularly in some income streams such as car parking. To date, much of the initial costs and loss of income has been able to be contained with the extra funding that government has provided. In 21-22, £1 million was set aside from the unallocated general fund balances, which so far has not been used. We propose to carry this provision over into 22-23, whilst there is still uncertainty over a number of service areas where income may continue below pre-pandemic levels or costs may remain higher than is allowed for in the base budget. Fees and charges have been reviewed by managers and cabinet members, with proposed charges for 22-23 set out in Appendix O. Car parking charges are being held at their current levels whilst a review of parking is undertaken. I'll talk a little about Provisional Government Finance Settlement. The Provisional Local Government Finance Settlement, announced on the 16th of December, set out a single-year funding proposal for local government, which we notice given that the government intend to review the needs and resources for all councils over the coming months. For 22-23, a new one-off, not ring-fenced services grant is being paid of £240,000. In addition, lower-tier services grant introduced for the current year is to be paid for a second year, with £156,000 allocated to the council. These two grants represent extra funding above that we had anticipated, therefore reduces the budget gap we were previously forecasting. However, we are treating this gain as a one-off until such time as we have more clarity over the changes in our future funding. We anticipate the final local government finance settlement to be announced on the 9th of February, unfortunately not in time for our next meeting, but however it will be in time for the council meeting. And if there are any changes to provisional settlements, these will be detailed at the full council meeting. Our balances remain healthy, and for this reason we are able to allocate some of our unallocated general fund balances to meet one-off investment needs, as well as using them for bridging the residual gap in our budget for next year of £93,000, thereby allowing us to balance the budget and set a council tax rate. After using balances, the estimated amount in the unallocated general fund balance at the end of March 2023 is currently £6.2 million. The financial challenge over the MTFS. Last year we forecasted, and I'm nearly there, you'll be pleased to know, last year we forecasted a budget gap of £1.6 million over the 4-year period ending 31 March 2025, whereas now we have been able to reduce that to £1.2 million over the current MTFS ending on the 31st of March 2026, assuming a 2% rise in council tax year on year and with a high degree of uncertainty around our longer-term funding from government. The current projected base budget challenge is profiled over the 3 years after 2020 22-23 as a shortfall of, in 23-24 of 925,000, in 24-25 shortfall of 119,000, and 25-26 a shortfall of 198k. The changes to the budget and MTFS are set out in Appendix C to the report, with further analysis of the budget by service areas in Appendix D. Detail of the business rate estimate is set out in Appendix B. Council tax. Our aim is to be a low council tax authority. Our Bandy council tax rate in 21-22 is £184.68 and is the fourth lowest in the 12 district and borough council in Essex. The budget proposal includes an increase for 22-23 of £4.95 for the year. This gives a Bandy tax rate for the council share of the overall bill of £189.63. There are other matters in the report which I won't talk to other than two. One is business rate pooling. The Secretary of State for Levelling Up Housing and Communities has confirmed the Essex pool will continue for 22-23. New homes bonus, which I know is interesting to many people around the table. The government has proposed to continue to allocate new homes bonus using the same methodology applied for 21-22. On that basis, the council has been allocated £1.4 million. It was also announced that outstanding legacy payments of 225k would be paid. I'll pause there and take any questions.
Thank you, Councillor McKee. Any comments or questions from anyone? Councillor Abbott?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Three questions. But first of all, just to welcome the investment in planning enforcement and the process by which we got to here, the collegiate or group approach I thought was very good. Also to welcome the continued investment in recycling, climate change and cycling. On the air quality investment, when will we get to see the details of that, and is there a target date for the new equipment? In the documents, it mentions that the service level agreement with Essex County Council in respect to the libraries is ending. My apologies if I've missed it, but it says in there that alternative provisions are going to be made. This is for things like collecting recycling sacks and other services there. If we haven't already, could we have a note to members as to what those alternatives are, please? And then in terms of the, you're quite right, new homes bonus. In terms of the local capital bid programme, which the leader has said will start, will any new homes bonus money be available for members to bid against in terms of their local priorities they might wish to raise? And finally, a letter's gone out to parish councils effectively announcing that the surplus return provision is going to end. I appreciate it was caveated in terms of there's a decision to be made at Cabinet and a decision to be made at Council. But a bit of a rhetorical question, but it did arise to me. What would have happened if a successful amendment had been taken to Council to return the council tax surplus to parish councils? What was the logic behind that letter going out now ahead of the decisions being made? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Abbott. I'll take some of those questions and I'll ask Councillor Schmidt, I think, to take a couple of those, and then if there are any other points, come to Councillor McKee. Let me first of all take the issue regarding the the payments that we have made to town and parish councils since 2015-16, when we announced it, I think in a letter I wrote to all councils, that it was going to be a one-off payment, which has continued on. The reason, and of course, the letter that has gone out has made it that it has always been a council decision and will remain a council decision. And as Councillor Abbott says, there is a possibility that someone might move an amendment at full council and change that situation. So that is there. There was I was under, some people wished, including, I think it would be fair to say, some members who were on the committee, that we should give as much notification to town and parish councils as possible as to the the likelihood that that proposal might be going forward, that there would be none this year. I weighed it up because each year, until council made a decision, there was no additional money to the other local authorities. So it was just out of courtesy to let them know rather than leave it until March. Whether there were any councils who got the letter and it was the first time they heard, I don't know. But if there were, at least they were getting notification. So that was damned if you do, damned if you don't, I suppose, in a way on that. On the issue of the new homes bonus, there will be proposals coming forward regarding how we intend to use the new homes bonus. Depending on that, will determine how much of the new homes bonus might still be available. I think it likely that we will be committing most of that new homes bonus in the foreseeable future. However, that doesn't preclude, of course, members putting forward proposals for capital items, and as I've given an undertaking, we will seek that at the very start of the civic year 22-23, so that there is time for a proper evaluation of any proposals that are put forward for consideration when we are considering the budget in the autumn of this year. The previous system was we would ask members almost virtually at the last thing whether there were issues. So it will give an opportunity for robust schemes to be considered. I'll now go to Councillor Mrs. Schmidt about the item of air quality equipment. Oh, and arrangements for the library services, etc. And if there's anything else, I'll just check with you afterwards. Councillor Mrs. Schmidt.
Thank you, Chairman. We have just completed an invitation to quote for an independent review of our air quality monitoring methodology. That paper will be going out to people who may wish to tender the quote within the next week or so. And until we get the result of that, we will obviously not purchase the new equipment because it just depends on what comes back from the independent review. But that, as I said, the papers are going out within the next week, and so hopefully we should know certainly within the next few months of what the review will be. Because it would be foolhardy of us to go out and buy a couple of monitors and then we're told that there's different ways of doing things. So we want to get this right from the beginning. That's all. Thank you, Chairman.
And the issue regarding... Councillor McKee, are you picking up the issue about the service agreement with libraries? Thank you.
Certainly, I think we will happily write to members and explain what is going on. The SLA actually is now probably not needed. It's the exchange of letters because it's such a simple service that they're providing, which is clear sacks, and we've done some reciprocal agreement effectively that we'll do some service for them at a net cost of almost zero to the taxpayer. That was the objective of the exercise, and it doesn't need a very complicated service level agreement. It's exchange of letters, and as soon as that is, I haven't even seen it yet, but that's new news. As soon as you get that, we'll put it out to members so they're aware of what the library service looks like. But it's a cost-saving exercise for both of us.
Has that picked up all the points, Councillor Abbott?
Well, just to come back then, so I'm assuming then that from that services will continue at the libraries.
Correct.
So that was part of the question, because
yes.
Reading the paper, it almost looked like alternatives to the libraries were being looked at. But if that's the case, that's good news. So if that could be explained, that would be great.
Well, alternatives were looked at on a cost-saving basis, but we've come to a different agreement to meet both parties' interests and save the taxpayer money, which was the objective in the first place, and provide the service.
But we will make it absolutely clear to members as soon as that's done what the situation is, so that every member is aware of what's going on in their patch. Okay. Any other comments, Councillor Mann?
Thank you, Chair. These are quite detailed questions, but they haven't been raised at any of the other forums, so I'm quite happy to have a written report. um, if the answer is not immediately available. Now, in order of the report itself, on page 9 at 5.6, claim under budget strategy, claims for increased costs are also expected to be made by contractors currently engaged on capital programme. How do they have to evidence these claims for increased payment? What projects are they? And is there any idea of the total extra cost that might be involved? And how might they be funded? For example, is there any chance of claiming this back from the various sort of streams of COVID support? So that's the first one. Second one refers to page 14, the homelessness prevention grant, which I think is 411,000. Government plans to review the method of allocation of the HPG during this year to, and I quote, better align grant determinations to performance and delivery options. I presume that refers to what we're doing now. Any idea of what this will mean for the authority in future years? How it might, for example, impact on the actual grant figure that we receive? I understand there's a consultation, and that may not be clear at the moment, but one would hope that our performance was quite good in the terms, the criteria set at the moment. So hopefully that's not going to lead to a great change in that funding stream. On page 22, there's a bit I don't understand at all. At 7.7.7, this is to do with housing benefit net costs. And I quote, in addition, the increased use of temporary bed and breakfast style accommodation, along with an increasing number of charitable and other similar operators in the district, is resulting in additional costs being incurred. Now, a bit I don't understand is how the increasing number of charitable and other similar operators in the district is resulting in additional costs being incurred. One would have thought the reverse might be true, but I'm obviously misunderstanding that. And the final point at 18.2.8. This is earmarked reserves, and our old friend, the planning appeals reserve, to increase the existing planning appeals reserve by 96,000 to supplement resources that are able to continue to defend the council in the case of planning appeals. What is the actual sort of war chest that we've got now? I did look through the figures and couldn't work it out. If this is an additional figure, then what's in there already? I can remember, I think a couple of years ago we had anything up to 500,000 in there to fight appeals if necessary. So what's in the war chest for the coming year to fight appeals? Okay, thank you, Chair. Sorry.
Thank you, Councillor Mann. I've managed to keep all the pages. I could have taken one more question, I think, and can I just say I'll go through them, but on the issue of 5.6 costs, I think most local authorities are experiencing claims from contractors for increased costs, and also during COVID, not least increased costs in materials, etc. You'll be aware that we clearly have a number of projects which have been working during that period, so I think it's fair that we just highlight that we might expect there to be some additional costs on that. My next thing is the housing prevention grant. Councillor Bowers, is that an issue that we can answer now, or do we need to give a written response on that?
I think it would need to be a written response. I'm not sure we know too much anyway, but we will get a written response in regards to what we do know. But I can't promise we know too much, but we'll get out what we do know. Thank you, Councillor Mayor.
Thank you. Then we move to housing benefit net cost. Councillor McKee, Phil, can you help us on that? Phil Myers, who's our gentleman who's put all this together. Yes, it's technical. Yes.
Yeah, so there are varying levels of subsidy that we receive against different types of claims. So it does vary, and that's one of the areas where the subsidy is not 100% that we would recover. So.
I'm not sure that you still look slightly puzzled, Councillor Mann. So do you want to come back? I think it was a bit about charities, wasn't it? Along with an increasing number of charitable and other similar operators in the district, is resulting in additional costs being incurred where subsidy recovery is restricted. We might need an even more layperson's interpretation of that, Phil, if possible.
Yeah. Well, maybe best if we provide that as a written, and then that'll set out the whole background to the increased costs around benefits, because it is quite a complex area. But yeah, I think that's probably the best.
Okay, thank you. And then the final one is on 18.2.8 at page 37, Planning Appeals Reserve. Councillor Mrs Spray, are you in a position to answer the question there?
Councillor Mann, I will give you a written response on that one. It shouldn't take too long to do that. All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Any other comments or questions at all? Not seeing any, in which case, can I first of all ask members of Cabinet if you are happy that the recommendations in paragraph 2 from 2.1 through to 2.1.21 that those recommendations should go forward to Council to seek approval. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed. Thank you. And that in para 2.2, that Cabinet agrees to the delegation of authority as set out in 2.2.1 and 2.2.2, and also the recommendation in 2.2.3. Are you able to agree to those three recommendations? Yeah. Thank you very much. I think I have picked up all the recommendations there. Can I thank Councillor McKee for introducing the report, and also to the finance team, and in particular led by Phil Myers, for the extraordinary amount of work that's gone into this. And of course there will be a full opportunity at Council for the whole of Council to consider the budget that is being put forward. Okay, anything else anyone wants to raise at all? No? In which case, let us move on to the next item on the agenda, which is agenda item 6 under operations and commercialisation. Item 6A, the award of tender for in-cab technology, which is on pages 5 to 8 of your agenda, members. And the purpose of this is following a tender review to consider approval of an award of a contract. Councillor Van Dolken will introduce the paper.
Thank you very much, Chairman. The report is to approve the award of a contract for an operations management system for the operations service vehicle fleet, essentially in-cab technology and customer relationship management, or CRM, to a company called Bartek Municipal Technologies. Bartek is a well-established leader in its field, or this field. It's a provider to 90 local authorities, including county councils, and it offers the latest cloud-based technology, which has been tried and tested with waste service operators. This contract will follow on from a 7-year contract with another provider, which has done a great deal to modernise and make more efficient our waste and street scene operations. The proposed new contract would be for 7 years for a total value of £343,000, which includes a capital bid for £150,000 for software and hardware such as tablets and cameras for the operatives and vehicles. As you will have noted from the report, Bartek scored highest of the 5 companies which tendered during the procurement process, as well as being significantly cheaper than the other suppliers which tendered. As you'll note also from the report, there are 2 options put forward. Option 1 is to not award the contract to Bartek at this time and allow the current contract to expire in June 2022. This would require either a rushed retender or mean that the operations and waste and other teams would be deprived of a valuable in-cab and customer service technology system. This is not the recommended option. The preferred option is to award the contract to Bartek, resulting in a saving of £37,000 in year 1 and additional savings of £282,000 across years 2 to 7 against the Council's base budget. This decision is subject to the approval of the Council's budget on the 21st of February. If approved, the Council will be able to quickly proceed with the award and enter into a contract with Bartek. I recommend this decision to Cabinet.
Thank you, Councillor Van Dolken. It's remiss of me also not to welcome you to your first Cabinet meeting and also for the excellent way in which you presented that report. Are there any comments or questions on it at all, members? Councillor Tattersley.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I think we're quite rightly very proud of our refuse collection service, and in particular the very low numbers that we've got on missed collections. And of course, in-cab technology allows us to recognise very early on whether we've missed a bin somewhere. It's extremely expensive and environmentally friendly to send another lorry out to pick out the missed bin. And having the in-cab technology allows us to pick up that very, very quickly, keep the very high customer satisfaction level and keep the costs down. And I commend that.
Thank you very much. Councillor Abbott.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a thought. Given that this new technology coming in, and Councillor Tatley's just mentioned environmentally friendly, what happens to the old equipment? Does this company deal with the old equipment in terms of recycling, or is that something the Council has to deal with, and where does it go to?
Thank you, Councillor Abbott. The equipment is, as I asked this afternoon, in fact, that very question, it is, in many cases, things like tablets, they are coming to the end of their life anyway. As anyone who has one of these knows, they even those of us who use them quite carefully find they come to the end of their life, and their use out on the road is fairly robust. So this would be, I assume, recycled.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? No? Then there is a recommendation at para 2.1 to approve, subject to the approval of the Council's budget on the 21st of February 22, the award of a 7-year contract to Bartek Municipal Technologies, BMT, for a total value of £343,670, commencing in February 22. Do I have agreement to that proposal? Agree? Thank you very much. That takes us on to item 7, urgent business. I have no urgent business in the public session, and there are no items to be considered in any private session. So without more ado, I will declare the meeting closed at 7:50.